listing those who died in the imperialist wars of the 20th century, because we are on the verge of drifting into a repetition of those calamities. I can just about remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, but I would say there has not been a time since then where the world has been more dangerous than it is today. We are lurching into a brazen regime of gangster imperialism which is setting fire to the world in one place after another. Of course, our main demand here, first demand, is hands off Iran, to stop what is a clearly criminal, bloody and brazen, unjustifiable aggression against Iran. And whatever one thinks about the regime in the Islamic Republic, we should send our solidarity to the Iranian people under this criminal Israeli-American bombardment. And first of all, of course, we remember the 160 schoolgirls killed by Israeli or American bombs in a war that was supposed to be about liberating Iranian women. There is no liberation in the graveyard, and that is the first of the bloody crimes associated with this war. Yes. But at the same time, let's not forget, there is this just as brazen and brutal an onslaught going on in Lebanon. Hundreds of children have died in Lebanon under Israeli attack going on at the same time. And what we see here is a war which of course could have been avoided. No less an authority than Downing Street's National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, said that the talks in Amman between America and Iran were going well and could have reached a conclusion. That is not what Donald Trump or Benjamin Netanyahu wanted. What the US wants is unrivaled domination over the Middle East and of much of the world as it can. What Israel wants is to destroy any possibility of any support for the Palestinian people.
Correct.
And let us not forget, as we stand here today talking about the wars in Iran and Lebanon, that at the top of our agenda always must be solidarity with the heroic Palestinian people standing strong in the face of a genocide which the world has done nothing to stop. And we know what is happening in Iran today is only part of a bigger picture. We've seen the kidnapping of the head of state and his wife in Venezuela. We see the attempt to starve Cuba, the Cuban regime, into collapse. We see threats to Colombia, to Panama, to Mexico, to Greenland, even to Canada. This is a program of endless worldwide war for a gangster imperialism. But let me say a bit about Britain's own role in this. A comrade said to me earlier that really Keir Starmer is gaslighting the British people. He is pretending that we are playing no part or a very minor part in the aggression against Iran. He had legal advice that we couldn't take part in an offensive war, so he simply rebadged it as defensive. The same planes are taking off from the same British bases, dropping the same bombs on the same targets in Iran as they would be offensively, but now he is pretending we're doing it defensively. And this was not him taking a stand for international law. He was advised that the original request from the Americans was illegal. So the Ministry of Defense spent the whole weekend liaising with the Pentagon to get them to formulate their next request in a way that Britain could go along with. So Britain is up to its neck in this bloody war in Iran, just as it's been up to its neck in enabling the genocide in Gaza, and just as Britain is Starmer says, defending British interests in the Middle East. What are those interests? Propping up corrupt dictatorships along the Gulf and protecting bases that shouldn't be there to begin with. What national interest is served by having bases in Bahrain or Cyprus? And let's support the people of Cyprus, and they are now saying, get those bases off our island. They don't want to be dragged into our wars. So let's have no doubt about it. Britain is involved right up to its neck in this conflict, and we have to demand a change. But there's something else too. This is a war that is already impacting here at home in Britain too, in several ways. And this is something new. I had the honour of leading the demonstration in 2003 against the attack on Iraq. That was a war, a criminal war. That was, of course, it's no surprise that Tony Blair is now re-emerging saying we should back the Americans fully, give the criminal full marks for consistency. But even then, those wars in Iraq, in Afghanistan, later in Libya, they didn't have a profound impact here at home in terms of people's lives. This war is already having that impact. The war in Iran has been an economic catastrophe. It's going to impact on the living standards of every person in this country, and that is why we need to be demanding an immediate end to the attacks on Iran, which is the only way to get the Strait of Hormuz open again and to get oil and gas being transited freely and normally. But that's only one way it's impacting. We also are in the midst of an unprecedented arms spending binge, with Keir Starmer projecting that the share of our national wealth to go on the military is rising from 2% to 2.5% to 3.5% or 5%, depending on what one includes, by the time we get into the 2030s. Already, the overseas aid budget has been eviscerated to pay for this increase in arms spending, and that's gone now. So the future increases aren't going to be paid for by cutting overseas aid because there's really nothing left. It's going to be paid for in terms of facilities like this library, like the health service, like education. There is no possibility of meeting these increases demanded by Donald Trump, acquiesced in by Keir Starmer, without a wholesale attack on living standards in this country. And we need to take that argument out to ordinary people, into the trade unions. The demand welfare, not warfare, is absolutely vital for the future of the British people. And there's one more thing too.
Welfare, not warfare.
We cannot separate these wars from the escalating racism and Islamophobia in this country. Every week, the boundaries are being pushed by the right, and not just the so-called far right, by even Tory politicians like Nick Timothy, demonising the Muslim community. They were attacked for how they voted in the Gorton by-election. They were attacked for how they prayed in Trafalgar Square. Politicians on the right are outbidding themselves with moves to drive the Muslims out of public sphere in Britain, and outbidding themselves to see how many plans for deportation or remigration, as they try and rebrand it, that they can come up with. And these measures are, in my opinion, not, if they were to be enacted by a government, they are not substantially different from the initial measures taken in the early part of the Hitler regime in Germany against the Jews. It is the same marginalisation, drive out of public life in this country. And that has to be connected with the wars we are fighting abroad, with the fact that most of our British imperialism's targets this century have been Muslim majority countries, and this demonisation is not separate, this racism is not separate from war and from the attack on our living standards. So we need to build a movement in this country that links these issues and forces a change on our government, a change towards peace and justice. Now, while we're assembling up at Dead Man's Corner, I've never assembled there before, that we saw a man came by with a Union Jack and a cross of St George, and on it was written, "Lest we forget." Lest we forget here is that war slaughters working people. War is being waged in the interests of our rulers, not ourselves. And the way to honour these dead is to make sure there is no repetition, and that means standing against our own imperialist government today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. We have two more speakers, both from the University of Kent. Unfortunately, 2 weeks ago there was a meeting in Canterbury.
Every word counted there. Another wasted word. Fantastic.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. I'm usually told to be quieter, and here I'm being told to make a bit more noise. Right, 2 weeks ago in Friends Meeting House in Canterbury, I was unfortunately unable to go to the meeting, but I've heard from various people in Canterbury the enthusiasm for our next two speakers. So if they could come up, please. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. Yeah. Thank you.
Shall I introduce and then keep talking? Hello everyone, my name is Kaveh, Abbasian. I'm a lecturer at the University of Kent, and I am actually originally from Iran. I'm from Iran. Been living here for 18 years. So it's an honor to be among you, to protest on a local level. It's a pleasure to know that the grassroots in the UK have been involved for a very long time, and especially since 7th of October, at the beginning of the genocide in Gaza, in order to raise their voices against the ongoing imperial genocide going on in West Asia, in my home countries as well. But we can talk about all the military aspects of what's going on. We know about Diego Garcia, we know about Cyprus, we know about the involvement of Britain, we know that the nuclear submarine has been deployed to the Arabian Sea, we know about the role of America, we know about the role of Israel and all the rest of it. But in order to know what has led us to this moment, that American empire, the collective colonial Western empire with their military garrison in our region, I'm talking about Israel, in order to know how they dared to unleash this war, especially on Iran, it's important to know that for 47 years at least, what role the media has played, and I'm talking about this as a media lecturer as well, what role the media, especially the Western media, has played in demonizing not only the Iranian state, which is often called in these media as a regime, like the Cuban regime or the Venezuelan regime or the Iranian regime, the Iranian state, but also the demonization of the Iranian people and the demonization of our 1979 Great Revolution, in order to say that this was a fundamentalist revolution and these are a bunch of fundamentalist demons who have come and they're bloodthirsty and they're anti-Semites and they are here to kill everyone and they're killing their own people and all the rest of it. Absolute lies. What I'm trying to do first and foremost here is to tell you, as a child of the revolution, who was born in the immediate aftermath of the revolution, that the Iranian revolution for me is the moment my grandmother learned how to write, is the moment when the revolutionary Iranian people unleashed a campaign of literacy, revolutionary literacy, where in a country where the literacy rate was 35%, immediately the literacy came up to more than 90%. In a country when the share of the female students in higher education were 15%, this came up to 65% for females in higher education in Iran, with 75% in engineering and science departments. So when they tell you that the Iranian revolution took Iranian people back to 1,400 years ago and all the nonsense like that, tell them, no, the Iranian revolution brought about nationalization of major industries, literacy, land reforms, eradication of the disgusting aristocracy of Iran and the monarchy in that country. And that was the reason why so many monarchic little companies who call themselves countries in that region were trembled, and that is exactly why they unleashed an 8-year-long war against Iran during the Iran-Iraq War in 1980 to 1988. Our revolution brought about a new idea, a new hope in the region, no matter what happened afterwards, and we were unsuccessful in achieving many of our goals. Our revolution had dreams, and those dreams are still continuing. What happened after that was periods of sanctions when Iraq was unleashing chemical weapons provided by Germany and America against Iranians, who lost 150,000 people to chemical weapons. And when Iran could not even, let alone missiles, buy even a barbed wire to protect its borders, Iran decided to develop its own weaponry, its own industry. Iran decided to develop everything because it was sanctioned and no one was selling anything in Iran. And this is exactly why this independence that Iran managed to create for itself was the reason why the empire hated Iran so much for such a long time and unleashed such a media campaign, a cognitive warfare, a media warfare against the Iranian people in order to make the people of the world believe that we need to attack this country because it is unleashing war against the rest of the world. While Iran has not been involved in any aggressive military campaign for 300 years. As a result of this long-standing media warfare and cognitive warfare, we came to a moment when unfortunately some elements inside the Iranian diaspora also got to believe this media warfare. But most importantly, it is the Americans, the American empire and the Israelis who, as we say, drank from their Kool-Aid and believed that the Iranian society is no longer a revolutionary society. Believed that the Iranian society would collapse in the immediate aftermath of the killing, the assassination of their political leader. I'm talking about Khamenei. This did not happen. The calculations of the Americans and Israelis were wrong. You came, killed our school children, 165 of them, in your first day of attack, in order to create shock and awe. You came and assassinated our political leaders. You came and unleashed a campaign of destruction of civilian infrastructure and civilian buildings and killing civilians, thinking that this would create the society to break and to capitulate and to surrender. This did not happen. What happened was that we came to understand that the empire is naked. The empire has no longer any power. They thought for such a long time that they in their universities they can establish Iranian studies and to know Iranian society better than themselves. Guess what? They were wrong. The Iranian society stood united, no matter what was happening before this, no matter about the political oppression and all the rest of it. No matter to that. For that we have our own solution. We have our own grassroots social movements and political movement inside Iran, and we have achieved so many things. But when you attack our country, I'm talking to the empire, when you attack our country, our civilization, we unite against you, no matter what political discontent we have inside our countries. So take this as a lesson. This will be the beginning of the end of your genocidal century, the genocidal century of the American empire. And in doing this, Iran is not alone. Iran has people like you everywhere around the world, and in the region it has allies. It has the Yemenis, it has the Lebanese, it has the Palestinians, it has the Iraqis, and it has the support of all oppressed people around the world. And I see this not as a moment of despair, but as a moment of hope. I see brightness in the horizons. I see a beautiful future in which the American empire has cleared off from West Asia, has cleared off from the Persian Gulf, and for a very good time will not even think about returning to that region. And hopefully in that future where the American empire has been defeated, have been given a decisive defeat in West Asia, it will retreat back to its own borders, but it will require our own struggle, our united struggle, and in solidarity not only with each other inside the UK against our own government's involvement in this war, but also in solidarity with our international comrades all the way around the world. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, my name is Hammouri. I know quite a lot of you, and it's an honor to stand here with you again. I'm a lecturer in international law and legal theory at the University of Kent, and I work on war profiteering. So in the past few weeks have been lovely weeks for all the war profiteers who have seen their profits rise up to the sky. If there is a question about who's making a lot of money out of this or who's pushing for this inside of the British establishment, it is only to look around. All of the people who are deeply embedded into this industry in England, and sadly enough there are far too many of them, who tell us that this is British interest, but rather this is their interest. It's the interest of only a few. It's the interest of the elite who find somehow, as said before, that there is a need for British military bases all across the world. When we say we want to protect our military bases, the question is, for who? What on earth is Britain still doing all the way up in West Asia? Why are we still there? If Britain would like to put itself at the heart of calling for a civilized existence of humanity, the first it could do is to look inwards and say, well, perhaps it is nice for me to actually stop meddling in other people's business. Because guess what? Whatever is there in Iran, it's no one else's business but the Iranians themselves. And who is Britain to come and say we are going to #protect Iranian women when Britain's tax havens, Britain's meddling in wars all across the world, Britain's capitalist economic system is the reason why millions of women all across the world cannot make a living. Perhaps if we just think about it a little bit further, we will realize that we are at the core of an international economic system that maintains poverty all across the world. And not only that, looks at an environmental crisis in the eye and says, we want more. Guess who was the first state that actually prevented the Plastics Convention from going forward? Or the first state that prevented environmental protections going forward? Or the first state that is the first to fight in the United Nations against any form of regulation for arms companies? And then after all of that barbaric, uncivilized behavior, we are the ones who come to say, oh, we are going there to protect the Iranian people. Or British interest. Well, guess what? The narrative no longer upholds. Guess what? Your narrative no longer fools anyone. And guess what? This is actually the time when we see the lack of coherence fall. Your house of cards is falling apart. The house of cards built all across in Gulf vassal states. You know why there are so many Gulf states? You know why there is Bahrain, Oman, Qatar? It's because the British believed that it would be too dangerous for there to be big populations holding that much natural resources. That's why they split up these countries, so that they gave different patches of land to different oligarch families, rurals, elite families, and told them, you know what, take that. We will supply you with weapons and security as long as you're able to maintain those borders. These are made-up states that came in the 1960s and 70s, right when the fact that we found out that they have sources of oil. And that was done in order to subjugate their own people. You think that the people of Bahrain are happy? You think the people of Syria are happy? You think the people anywhere in West Asia or North Africa are happy? They are inherently subjugated. I myself, as a Jordanian citizen, find myself under subjugation all the time. My king is half British, and all of our foreign policy seems to serve, weirdly enough, everyone but us. We've been intercepting Iranian missiles on the top of people's heads. And you know what? That is to protect the same people who are killing half of our population. Half of the population of Jordan, like myself, are Palestinian. Because guess what? There is no difference between a Palestinian and a Jordanian. And the only differences between the Lebanese and the Syrian were also created by two men called Sykes and Picot, who are not from the region, not us. As a fifth-generation person born out of war, I tell you that I'm very hopeful at this moment because I see the tide changing. I see the narrative of empire dying. And I see an age where it was very much okay for England and for the United States to come all across my region to sow war after war after war after war in the name of not the public interest of the British people, but in the name of the elites, interest, in the name of the global transnational elite class is why these wars are being put forward. And I see a hope in the fact that their narrative is collapsing on its feet. That house of cards is collapsing. And our job now is to make sure that it collapses further and further. Our job now is to make sure that Britain has no way to complete its complicity in this war. Britain has nothing to do with this war, nor do the British public. Our tax money should not be going there. Our tax money should not be going to protect the interests of BAE Systems or BP or Chevron in the region. Our tax money should be going towards our hospitals, our education. That's where we should be spending our money, not all the way in to make sure and subjugate other people halfway across the world in the name of saving them when we can't save even our patients here, when our elderly are not given the proper access to healthcare, when me as a person who pays pension in this country and as a lecturer in a university do not know if my future will be something that will allow me to buy groceries enough as a working class person in this country. The last I would want to see is a government paying more money. What we should be focused on at the moment is actually in all of our hearts, in all of our souls, to say, hands off Iran!
Hands off Iran!
Hands off Lebanon!
Hands off Lebanon!
And hands off Palestine!
Hands off Palestine!
That's all that we should be holding up, and that's all that we should care for. And as my comrade before me said, the media is not telling the whole story, and it has been normalized. After Israel committed the genocide in Gaza, the threshold of blood has been crossed. We've crossed a red line where it's absolutely normal in less than 12 days to kill over 1,000 people in Lebanon, over 150 children, to destroy hospitals, churches and mosques over and over again, and for Israel to drop leaflets on the Lebanese and to tell them, if you refuse our annexation of your land, we will turn you into another Gaza. That is what we have normalized after a whole country, nor a whole population celebrated genocide. After politicians in our country here came and on live television said, cut the power of the civilians, cut the energy. And not only that, they are very much happy for the same thing to happen to the people in Cuba, to the people in Venezuela, to any country that says, I refuse a global economic system of subordination, of any government that seeks to even speak to the self-determination of its people. Yeah. We cannot uphold self-determination all over the world until political interference stops. We are here to say that the age of empire is dying. Empire is dying, and we are here to say, as conscious people in this country, we will play our role in history to stand correctly, to say no to more wars, no to more bombs, to say no to all of the economic supply chains that allow the proliferation of war all across the world. Not in our names, not with blood on our hands. We will stand and we will go to bed with our consciousness clear, knowing that we said no to war in West Asia. Thank you very much.
We have one final speaker, it's Rory who will introduce himself. Bring it to you, Rory.
Friends and comrades, my name is Rory Heap and I am honoured to be chair of the Kent Unite Community Branch, which is co-sponsoring this event. I want to just say we've had very, very eloquent contributions about the situation that we're facing, and I don't need to expand on that, except to say, to remind ourselves that when we say hands off everywhere, that we're saying hands off, we're not just talking about the Americans and the Israelis, we're talking about our government. Our government, which is complicit in the genocide and which is complicit indirectly in this war. And we have, my union has workers in the industries that help to supply the defense materials, so-called, that feed this war. And those people, whatever the leadership might say, those people have now been put in the front line, because there is no doubt that the bases that the Iranians might wish to hit as a result of our policy in this country, those bases are within reach. And our workers and citizens are in danger, and we should not forget that. But what I also want to say is that Unite Community is the part of the large Unite Union, which represents people who are not working and not able to work. And we should not forget that those people, disabled people, older people, mothers and homeless people, and people in bad housing conditions who are unable to work, those people are also the people who are going to end up paying for this damn war. So that's why my branch is backing to the help, the Stop the War movement generally, but also particularly the Whitstable and Canterbury Stop the War group. And we will continue to work hand in glove with that group.
Rory,
Yep.
we've got a message for Sharon Graham. She's head of United, she's a Zionist.
I do, but it's probably not broadcastable.
Thank you, Rory. I'd like to thank, well, first off, to thank everybody who's come today.
All right.
It's not as big as it might have been, but I think we made a splash and we stood up and we've been counted. There's 50 of us or so. I'd like to thank the 3 speakers, or 4 speakers. Sorry, Rory, I took you for granted, sorry. And I think as a final thing to say, what a contrast between the speeches that you heard today and the utter trash which has been on the media. Right, I was just saying, what a contrast between the content of the 3 speeches we heard today and the trash that has been on the media this week. Absolutely unbelievable. So, thank you all, and I'm sure we'll see you again. And a good afternoon. Bye.
No.